Half the population of women have dieted at some point in their life, and for 70% of those women, this is not the only time. Very many of these women have multiple diets throughout their life. But what is the impact that this is having on them physically, emotionally, psychologically? Let's have a look. Well, we know from the data that for the majority of people, that diets do not work in the long term. Perhaps for around 5 of 100 people, they might be effective in the long term. But for the rest of the people who are on diets, the likelihood is that they will regain the weight they lost, and they may even gain more weight. So let's have a look at what's going on. Well, first of all, one of the problems with dieting is that your metabolism slows down. So this means that you are slowing down how quickly you burn your energy, you're conserving your energy. Your body is wanting to do that. It's an inbuilt mechanism, because if you go into what it perceives as a famine, as a kind of starvation, then it slows down in order to hold on to your energy for times when it feels like you will eat again. So what happens over time is that your metabolism starts slowing down. Now, at the same time, what your body's inbuilt mechanism does is increase hunger hormones. There's a hunger hormone called ghrelin that you might have heard of. That's just one of them. And it will increase the hunger hormones to try to get you to biologically go and search for food to ensure that you are fed. And it's essentially a mechanism from thousands of years to help to keep us alive. And when we look at set point, and set point is something that tells us that we all have our own body's own range, set range of weights that it wants to be within, and everyone's is different. We're all individuals. And what happens over time and after many diets, after each diet, your set point range actually goes up a step. So if you can imagine that you have done yo-yo dieting for many years, range that your body wants to be at, your weight range, goes up in steps. So you're starting your next diet at a higher range from where you were before, and so on. And that's why it can seem so much harder. Perhaps with your first diet or first few diets that you might have tried, it might have felt easier, but then consequently you then regained the weight, started again, and it becomes harder and harder. And we see this a lot, and actually our set point tends to increase with age anyway, naturally. So it's something to bear in mind. Another issue with yo-yo dieting is that it actually changes our body composition. So what happens is when we go on a diet, we might lose a considerable amount of our fat mass and less of our muscle mass. Our lean body mass is our muscle mass, water, bones, etc. But we might lose a considerable amount of fat mass when we diet. However, when you regain the weight in this situation, what we tend to see is the fat mass goes up proportionately more than it was before. So we end up shifting our body composition into more fat mass and less lean body mass, which can have more implications on our internal health than just looking at things like your weight on the scales, for example. And we do know that from some studies, though there are some refuting it, but we have seen from some studies that weight cycling, as it's known in the literature, that's constantly gaining and losing weight with this yo-yo dieting, means that what happens is that we end up seeing people end up with metabolic changes and problems. So that means like hypertension, so high blood pressure, diabetes and cardiovascular problems. So there are studies into this. I'd like to see more studies, because I think it's an area we should really look at, and it is quite concerning. So it's something to just keep an eye on. Now, of course, another problem with yo-yo dieting is the emotional and psychological toll that it has. And this is something that I witness day in and day out with my clients. It has taken over their headspace. it is constantly on their mind, whether they're thinking about body image issues, they're thinking about food, there's a fixation around all of this, there's an obsession, it becomes a total preoccupation, it takes over so many aspects of their life, and it really has an impact in many different areas, in addition to their mental health. So if you think about the guilt and the shame that people feel if they fall off a diet, and then that preoccupation with getting back on a diet and starting a new diet on Monday, that's all going on, and it's really unhealthy. And as I've covered in other bite-size videos, the stress that's having on your body is often more of a problem than the actual food that you're eating yourself. So if you think about how that's impact your stress and your physiology in that way, it's really unhelpful. So what can you do? Well, there is another way. And the other way is the way that I teach my clients. I guide them and support them and coach them. And there is a way of being able to eat in balance, where you're moving away from all of that all or nothing thinking, where you can feel a freedom where you're eating to not only to look after and nourish your body, but just have a sense of liberation and freedom in your brain and psychologically. To start, I would recommend getting my Breaking the Cycle guide if you haven't already got it. If you have got it and you haven't started it, give it a go. There's 4 key steps there that can really help you start to make progress on healing your relationship with food. And of course, I've got my Facebook group, the Food Freedom Collective, where you can get extra support in there. I'm in there, and everyone in there shares the same challenges, so it's a safe space for you. So until next time, have a great week.